Hi there, so my task today is to essentially replace the element in a Truma 850 watt water heater. The symptoms are that whenever we turn on the water heater it trips both the Caravan, or either the Caravan and the sight. So we can see the power is on at the moment, the trip is up, and the water heater fuse is also up. That's the one on the left. And the circuit breakers on the right, the earth leakage. There's the power switch, and I'm going to flick that in a second. Okay, so I'm going to press this switch now, and it'll click it not only off here, but also back at the main supply at the fuse board. So the power is now dead, and I'm told that that is the classic symptom of a burnt out element in the Truma water heater, the 850. So here is the water heater, and I've just bent back these little flaps that are on the outside. Is a Truma US103, and the specific model is a 211-53073. It's an 850 watt unit. So I've bought a new heating element, and if you want the part number for that, it's a 720-00 270, and everybody I've contacted, they've said, well, you know, there's lots of different units, water heating units, but there's actually one that fits all of the 850s from this era. So you can see there it says 850 watts. That is our part number, and it's sold as a heating element. They are really expensive. This one I managed to get for £125, but the normal selling price is £139.95, which is, I think, exorbitant, seeing as if you were, or extortionate rather, because if you were buying a replacement element for a kettle, it would be a fraction of the price. Okay, so let's have a look at the unit and what we have to do. So the first thing we're going to have to do is to turn off the power to the water heater. That says charger and water heater. I'm going to turn that off. There's no power going through now, and I can test that it's off by turning the water heater on and seeing whether it trips it. It may well do. Let's try again. So the water heater is off and the power has not tripped. I will, when I start working on it, I will disconnect the power to the whole van, so there's no mains whatsoever. I just feel safer when working on any mains cable that way. But this should be safe enough, but better safe than sorry. Let's just have a little look at what we're up against. So the heater may look a bit like this with these little flaps down. What you have to do first of all to get access to everything is to flip back these little flaps. Now what I might do is put a bit of tape on those to keep them out the way, and then you'll see that what we've got inside here is, I don't know how easily you can see, maybe it'd be better from this angle, but we have got a thermostat on this yellow cable here. It's a bit of a thermostat down there. We've got our two water supply feeds, the red, which is the hot water out, and it always at the top, and the blue, which is the cold water in, which is always at the bottom because hot water rises to the top of the tank. And then, if you can see underneath, we've got our black cable here. So our black cable just down here, that is not very easily seen because it's also dark down there, but that black cable there is actually the one that feeds our unit, and our unit has got that set of bolts. So the other thing we need to do in preparation is to make sure we drain the whole system down. So you should have a lever here, lift that up and allow all the water to drain out. It will take a considerable amount of time probably because the air can't get in that easily, but it does drain out. It's worth doing first thing before you even start. Our one's been draining now for about 3 months. So here we go. These are the tools that I used in order to replace my Truma water heater element. First of all, you'll need a replacement kit, which is here. We can see there, and mine's the 850 watt element. It should look something like this when it arrives, with a yellow cabled, yellow sleeved temperature monitor on the side. So the tools that you will need, well, to undo the compression water fittings, they should pretty much come by hand, but you might need to start it off with a pair of grippers, mole grips or something along that line. Please be very careful and very gentle. Once you've got into it, you will need a socket set with a 7mm and a 5.5mm socket in order to do up the nuts and bolts. Your kit will come with a pair of 7mm bolts, but it will not come with the 5.5, so do not lose those. Hence we pack around with everything, and you may want to just make sure that you've got some system for hanging onto it. I also used a pair of wire strippers and a pair of snippers in order to cut through the mains cable, because it had this on the end in order to connect it to the van, and that needed replacing with a Choc-box. So I've put that in, and it's a sealed one, so it's well away from any water. I also found a pair of snipe nose pliers was really helpful to hold everything in place. And really, other than a crosshead screwdriver to do up the Choc-box and a small electrical screwdriver to make sure that we can work everything, you also need probably a replacement 5 amp fuse, because that will almost certainly have gone in your water heater in addition to everything else. Okay, so I've taken the red one off. Just going to get this over the end there, which appears to be octagonal, and it's just, I'm turning it clockwise from where I'm standing. And then once I've just loosened it off, do as much as you can by hand. So if I get underneath so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that's going clockwise from the back here. Okay, loosens off. There's the usual compression fitting. Move any other pipes out of the way, and then gradually loosen this. You might get a dribble of water, I'm hoping not. Okay, then we've done those. I'm going to tuck those right out of the way, because they're just going to be a pain in the butt. So now we've done that, we should be able to get a clearer view of what's going on under there, and you should be able to see that we've got the heating element and the thermostat. So the heating element is just underneath, behind, down here. So the next task we'll have to do before we start taking any bolts off, now that we can get down here, is to actually stuff a whole load of kitchen towel or something right down into this gap that goes down through the insulation. And the reason we've got to do that is because we've got some tiny weeny little bolts, and if they fall down inside, we are just about shot. Okay, in addition to the tools described already, you will need a 5.5mm socket and a 7mm socket, and you can get those in a kit. The one I have was this one, it's a silver line. Okay, so here we are, the 5.5mm. Undo them, not too tight they weren't. You pull it off by hand, and then get your finger right down the length of your socket to the end, and then carefully, gradually pull off, and then without dropping. And there are 4 screws. Now we can remove the element. Okay, so let's now get the element out. We do that by pulling on the little yellow cable and gently wiggling it, and it will break loose, and then it should come off. And they did use some fixing paste underneath, we're not going to be able to do that. And then you've got to get the element out, and that's probably now obscured by all of that tissue paper you put in, so you probably have to pull some of that out. Let's do that. Going to need to put that back in though before we take it all apart. So here's the element. Pull a bit of spare cable round, move these out of the way, and that's a hell of a lot of lime scale coming out with that. Holding onto the end, we've just got to pull it through. It's a funny old shape. That is our dead element. Okay, this is the connector that's inside. So it's obviously designed to come with that connector, and it's got a really long bit of cable on it, and I'm not sure that my replacement is going to be able to manage that. So I'm going to have to look and think about how I'm going to reconnect it at the other end. So our next task is to look at how to connect this bit of mains cable to our existing one. Okay, so let's just have a look inside the packet that we've got. We've got the element, which is exactly the same as the other one, with a moderate length of cable on. I'm not sure it's going to be quite long enough, so I'm going to have to check that one out. We get an O-ring, which will need to be fitted just over here. Okay, so that goes on over the top and then around there, and that seals up against the unit. And then we also get 2 replacement 7mm nuts. What we don't get is 2 replacement 5.5mm for the thermostat. So make sure you've hung on to those and you haven't lost them. They will need to be replaced otherwise. And you also get a set of instructions present. But it doesn't seem to apply because we've got the wrong connector for that. So I've fed the new cable underneath the water heater. There's a space underneath it. It sits proud of the base. And you can see it comes out here, and when I line that up over there against the existing connector, then I find that over here I've got exactly the same amount of cable between the two. So I think it'll be a direct replacement from that point of view. I've just got to find this way of connecting the 2 cables in a watertight and fairly safe way. But sadly, the amount of cable that peeks out at the top end of this connector here is very limited, and it's going to be a bit of a pig to connect anything to it. I'm sure there's a proper connector that is available. Okay, well, I'm going to start putting it back together again now, and then we'll have a little look at how to connect the 2 wires together. But I want to get the new element in. You can see down there, and what I'm doing is I'm also recording on a GoPro down below, so that we can see everything. The first thing to do is to clean up that whole of that mounting, which the O-ring is going to go against. So get a nice bit of cloth and give it a really good clean around. Make sure there's no lime scale in there, because this one was absolutely heaving with lime scale. We then take the new element, and what we're going to do is to put the O-ring on the outside of it. Okay, so here is the new element, and there's the O-ring, and I'm just going to slip it down. See if I can do this one-handed, right down over, and make sure it's properly seated all the way around. Now, some places would recommend you use a bit of sealant paste as well, which I used to have in the good old days, but I haven't got any now. And I'm now going to pop this back into the hole. I have no idea whether I'll be able to do that, so let's put both cameras there and have a look at, see how easy that will be. Should have checked which way it was. Okay, so here we go. We're going to now take my 7mm and the 2 new nuts, and we're going to fit those in place. So the first thing I do is to pop the nut inside the end, to hope that I don't lose it. And then with me specs carefully lined up, I glue that over the top, and then I do the second one. Please don't fall inside. Now that is only finger tight at the moment, so now my task is to do it up properly. And we don't know what sort of torque settings they've got on here, and my glasses are not going to enable me to get in, but I'm going to do it. Pretty much hand tight. Don't do them too tight separately, but do them both up bit by bit. Give the O-ring a chance to settle in, and that seems to have come to a halt. And this one, and that seems to have come to a halt. Just another one, see if it's softened. That looks pretty good, and that's pretty good. So they're now tight, in my book anyway. And now the really tricky one is to get those 5.5 mils back in place. So I'm going to fit the 5.5 mil socket, put the nut in the end there. Some people would recommend holding it in with a bit of blue tack. I'll take the specs off and very gingerly fit the thermostat back into place, and then connect. First one. Now the second one, which is a right pain to see. It's quite dark under there. I'm going to have to be very careful. There we go. I think that's going on. Yeah, it seems to be getting stiffer. Okay, I don't know if we can see in there. I think we can. There's a black O-ring deep inside, and what we've got to do is to ping that out with a screwdriver, and then once we've done that, we can fit it to the unit. So I'm just going to zoom this one back out, hold it with my chin so you can see what's going on, except my chin wants to zoom in. So I'm going to hold it hopefully here, and then just get the screwdriver underneath, just very lightly ping out the O-ring. It comes out pretty easily, and that's going to go here. And if you remember, the red one goes at the top and the white one, the blue one, goes at the bottom. So let's screw those together again. Okay, so we're now going to do the electrics, but before we've done that, I have turned off the power under here, so all the power is off. I've tripped off the RCD, so there is no power to the system, and I've pulled the socket out the front of the van. So as long as that's sitting outside, I know that I'm pretty clear to go. Right, so the next thing to do is to cut off that connector and then fit the new one. So here we go, here's the replacement connector. It's called a Choc-box, and I've cut off the ends, and it's going to be a right so and so because it's not very long at all. but I've got to somehow connect that loose bit of wire that's hanging down here, just there. Oh, I'm not even sure you can see that very easily. I'll zoom in if I can. But that little loose bit of wire there has now got to be connected. So I've probably got to strip it back a bit and then strip off the ends of each cable and connect them into this Choc-box that I've bought. Okay, ideally I would have gone into something else, but this will give me the ability to just work within the cable lengths that I've got, and also to replace it in the future. I could have done spade connectors and other things like that, but in all truth I'm not confident with their use. I'm not entirely sure I would be safe. Well, there we go, there's the first of the connectors connected on. You'll see there's a bit of bare brown because of the way in which I cut the cable, but that should be okay. Okay, so now you can see I've fitted the connector to it, and I'm going to wrap the Choc-box around the outside, the box, the protective box, and then hopefully that is all connected. We are with the new Choc-box wired in. I wasn't able to film that for a couple of reasons. First, it was difficult to get the camera there, and secondly, my goodness, if you could have heard the language as I was trying desperately to work on it. But it's all connected in, and it looks pretty safe, and it's screwed up and it's out of the way, and I just feel that that sort of connection is better, because I'm bound to have to change this again in the future. Shame at the price, but there we go. And now comes the acid test. Well, what the first of the acid tests. Does it still short out? So I haven't put any water in it yet, so probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to turn the trip back on. So there we go. I'll just zoom out so you can see the trip is now back on, and now I'm going to turn on the socket to the heater. That's now on, and now we're going to come over here to the switch, and I'm just going to give it a quick flick and see if it takes the trip out. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Nope. So that was all working fine. So there's electrically it either doesn't work at all, or it's fixed. Right, now to fill it up with water and check that it's watertight. Okay, so it's now filled with water. I remember to close down that yellow valve there, otherwise the water would just go straight in and out again. And I'm now just testing my joints, and they all appear to be sealed. I've got another problem that I've had for a long time actually with this, in that it just keeps pumping on a fairly regular basis, which I'm told is possibly a bit of grit in this filter here, allowing a bit of a loss of pressure. There could be a range of other things. If the whole lot goes belly up, then it'll be fixed, and I've turned it on. So now I'm just waiting for the water to get hot, and then I'll let you know if it gets hot. Well, there you go. When I turned it on, everything appeared to be all right, but the water didn't get hot. And I was exploring why, and then it just crossed my mind there was no power getting to it. Okay, so when I turned it back on, the thing didn't work, and I just want to explain why, in that down here there is a fuse tray. We pull that forward, you'll find there's actually a space for 2 fuses. The one at the back is the one that connects with the sockets, and the one at the front, which this was in, is a spare. The main one had gone, so I just need to, it's a 5 amp fuse at the back there, so I've put the clean 5 amp fuse in, and I'm going to push it in and now turn it on at the mains, and now turn it on here. It all appears to be fine, it's not gone off, and I will replace that 5 amp fuse to make sure that we've definitely got a spare here, but it looks as if that goes every time the element breaks. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you. Do me a favour and just put a like underneath it, so that I know that it's been not just watched and run through a bit, but maybe that you actually found it useful, and put any notes underneath. I'll try and add a few notes into the description of this video underneath as well. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers, take care, bye bye.